I'm Steve Pearce. I grew up south of Hobbs at Nadine. I was actually born over in Lamesa, Texas. Dad was a sharecropper just outside of O'Donnell. They did that till I was about a year and a half old. Mom says when I was first born that year, they made $200 for the whole year. Next year, another drought year, $50. She said, we're leaving. She had seen an uncle's paycheck from here in Hobbs. He made more per week than they made per year. And she said, we're going to the oil field and we're going to get a job. Dad had enough sense to jump in the back of the pickup. At that point, there were just 3 of us kids. The other 3 would come along later after we got here. He jumped in the back of the pickup because she meant business. We weren't going to live that sharecropper life anymore. Came over, we lived just on South Cecil Street, just behind Hobbs Pipe and Supply, over just off Marland. Had just a little tiny house. Dad was working for, at that time, B&M Services, expert B&M, working for $1 an hour. Mom always understood the flow of things better than Dad. She started understanding that the big jobs were with the major companies and began to watch. Finally heard of one of the openings at Humble Oil and Refining, she sent Dad down to apply for that job. It was in Eunice. They hired him on the spot. We moved to Eunice in that little camp, and again, the engineers lived on one camp, and we, the further in, toward the other end of the camp, kind of the lower in the economic spectrum. We were the next to the last house at the other end of the camp, and probably 800 square feet. Grew to 6 kids at one point, 5 kids actually there. Mom was always the independent one. Dad could feel the kind of encroachment of the people who lived in that oil camp, interfering in the lives, too much contact, and so they wanted to move to a place of their own. Bought 5 acres up from the superintendent of schools at that point in Eunice, a little irrigated farm. He grew alfalfa. We moved up there in 1957, so I was just under 10 years old. And I tell people we were moving from Eunice to Hobbs and ran out of money 5 miles short, and I grew up in Nadine. It's only a brief extension, but that 5 acres is everything that I am. I watched Dad work his job with Humble in the daytime, come home in the afternoon, get on that little first farm-all tractor, and then we finally upgraded to an 8N Ford tractor, and we all felt like we had reached the pinnacle of farming. We had stirred that 5 acres worth of dirt. We grew pigs and sheep for 4-H, and we grew all of our own vegetables. Of course, we took the pigs, and that's what we lived on for the meat for the year, and showed at the county fair, the state fair in El Paso. We're able to put enough money back so that each one of us 6 kids was able to go to college from that. Dad's pay just was $2.62 an hour and graduated each year with raises, but basically kind of at that lower end of the spectrum. And it's a true thing that we sold vegetables on the side of that highway there going to Eunice on the 4-lane highway, and literally it was to help make ends meet. I can remember Dad's paychecks many times after the gasoline was taken out. He worked for Humble, had a Humble credit card, and they'd take gasoline out first. And I can remember the checks a lot of times $90 for 2 weeks to get 6 kids and Mom and Dad through 2 weeks. So, but I think most people in that time grew up sort of on the poor end of the spectrum, but you never realized, poor or not, you're just one of the people here. It's the way Lee County was, and I think the greatness of this country is it allows somebody, a sharecropper's kid, to graduate from high school, go to college, go take flying lessons with the Air Force, do my service in Vietnam, come back home, own my own business, and eventually end up in Congress. That's the greatness of this country, that it allows us that social mobility to start kind of at the bottom of the ladder, and you can make your way up as high as you want to go. Now, Dad was always content with life and his 5 acres. And I tell people that, for me, the value of us as people owning land was exemplified in Dad. That 5 acres, if in the hands of the government, and many people want the government to own all the land, and we just get to use it. that 5 acres would have had no value for a large corporation, would have had no value at all for the government. But Dad, working there with that little one irrigation well and 6 kids, put Mom through college, put 6 kids through college. 2 or 3 of us got master's degrees, all from 5 acres of ground that would have been worthless in the big scheme of things. And so I tell youngsters many times, they come to D.C. and they want to know, Mr. Pearce, how did you get here? Meaning, you had to have been born into wealth, and you had to be born in this. And I say, look, I know what you're asking, and you're believing that you could never end up at this place in life. I'm just telling you that I'm the least likely to end up if it depends on graduating high in your class. I didn't. In fact, if it hadn't been for me, there might not have been a top half of the class. And it doesn't take being pretty. I mean, I tell the kids, look at me. Do I look like I was one of the pretty kids in school? And it doesn't take great gifts. I said my first speech in 4-H, I was 12 or 13. They didn't even score me because no words actually came out when I was giving my speech. As an introvert and shy, I felt like that I was dramatic and that I was really expressive. The truth is, I was standing there and just my mouth was working. And so I tell kids that you can do whatever you want. You just got to have one thing in life. And it's not good grades, not family, not riches, nothing. Nothing will get you success. One thing, and that is grit. The ability to persevere and get back up when life knocks you down. Now, I didn't have that tendency initially. I grew up deathly afraid of everything. It was Mom that grilled into me this grit that you get yourself back up, you get back out there, you are going to succeed, and she would not see failure anywhere around her. Mom was bigger than life. When I first ran for public office, just the number of people who came up and said, if it hadn't been for your mom, if it hadn't been for your mom, I began to hear that story. If it hadn't been for your mom. Now, Mom's childhood was no different than mine. Her dad was a horse trader there south of Lubbock, about the place we grew up in. Being a cattle trader and a horse trader was not, again, the top end of the economic spectrum. And again, with 10 kids, they would be out chopping cotton with the braceros. They would be out picking cotton, all 10 of them. So in my early youth, we lived just north of the Job field, just behind us. He grew cotton on about 100 acres. We would be down there in the spring with the braceros. The Rascon family just lived around the corner there on the Monument Highway. They would bring in the braceros every year, and the Pearce kids and Mom would be down there with them trying to earn enough to just get by. When it came time to pick cotton in the fall, we were back down there. That idea that we're going to succeed no matter what is deeply implanted into my being, but it was implanted by a mom and a dad who just would never give up in life. So many times, again, I encourage kids that all you got to have is the willingness to get back up. I said, every one of you can do that. And I can start seeing them shake their head. Success is that easy. We often want to make it unachievable to people. We want to make it out of reach because we don't want people to maybe see that close in our own lives. And so I think one of my biggest joys is sharing with kids just the very humble background that I grew up in, not in order to get sympathy, but to prove to them that you can do whatever you want to in this great nation, and that should be the thing that we hold on to dearly. So the lessons from growing up in Lee County, kind of a hard scrabble place. This is not the upper end of the economic ladder anywhere in the country, but you found the decency in human beings. And as I look at those distinguished old ranch families that we heard the names, but we never knew. Will Terry owned the ranch right beside where we grew up, and he was bigger than life figure to us. And Jack Wright was out there. He and his mom, Mrs. Foster, owned the other ranch. Dudley Thorpe is the one who gave me my first job at 9 years old. He would come in his pickup truck at 4:30 in the morning. He would pick me up. We'd go and change irrigation pipe. I would be soaking wet. I hated the cold. I hated it. But I got up every day to go to that because, again, Mom had implanted in me that he is depending on you. Then every afternoon he'd show up again. We'd go change that pipe again. I think one of the dramatic lessons I learned at that point, 9 years old, was the first time we'd worked 2 weeks, and he stopped on a Saturday afternoon, pulled up and shut the truck off. Normally he'd pull up, put it into park, and let me get out. Today he shut it off, and he reached slowly around and pulled out this big checkbook. It's, big book like that. We don't see those anymore. It's all digital. And he opened up that, and I could see him. He decided that he didn't want to write with the steering wheel, so he got out and went to the front and told me to get out and come around there with him. And he uses the hood of the truck as his desk, and he writes my name into that top line. And I'm really good at math, even at 9. I've already got my hours calculated and what it is. And when he filled that number in, whatever we had agreed on was the pay, and put that in and signed his name and tore that check out, I, for the first time, understood, even at 9 years old, that I had something that was valuable to other people, and that was my time. I think if there's something the country is missing, it's the idea of earned success. You can win the lottery, and frankly, your life is no better today than it was then. They do a lot of studies. You can inherit wealth, but nothing replaces the dynamic transformation that goes on inside when I earn my own way. So earned success may be the greatest lack in the country today. For me, it was the only way here in Lee County. Nobody had any more money than we did. If you're going to get successful, you had to earn your way there. And I still use that. I wish I had that check today, because of all the awards, every recognition I've ever gotten, that check had more transformational power in my life than anything else. And so often we try to give kids the opportunity, our family, my wife and I try to give kids the opportunity to earn their success. Just that little reassurance on the pathway to their future that says, I'm worth something to someone else. So this idea of growing up out here where very few people come voluntarily is to me the greatest blessing in my life. It taught me lessons that I could never have learned on the top end of the economic ladder. If you had these big factories, if you had big wealth, and instead the heartbeat of the country was in reachable people, reachable families, like the Berries, like the Medlands. These are all names from my childhood, people who were the fabric of the community. And they weren't too high and mighty like Dudley Thorpe, picking up a 9-year-old kid and taking me out to work like I'm just right alongside him every morning and every afternoon. You just can't get that in some of the big places. So for me, growing up in a rural area like this, that's been my biggest blessing. And success is different for everyone, and we will choose our own method. To some people, success is painting. Some, it's writing. Some, it's just going to work every day and coming home. And so watching Dad find his fulfillment there, finding his niche in life, just knowing that his family had told him, you never want to leave family, because there's nobody out there that's going to take care of you. So all of his brothers and sisters, he had a large family, and they stayed close around Mom and Dad. And my mom said, we are not going to farm this family plot of ground any longer for nothing. And so that breaking loose from the gravitational pull of family to come over here was a dramatic change, and it was very difficult for him. But then to find his self-expression, Dad actually got very good. He was very talented. He was a talented artist. He did his own veterinarian work on our pigs. He could have done almost anything in life, but he never had the courage. And Mom didn't want to criticize him, so she never did. But she also implanted to me, I was, of the 6 kids, the one with the least courage. And so Mom could see that, and she did not want me to be afraid to walk into a bank and borrow money. Dad never borrowed the money for our family. It was Mom, and then she handed it off to my oldest brother. When he went to college, it jumped a brother to me. I was 13 and going in and signing banknotes, notes that we would repay the next year after we went to the county fair. And that's back when Mr. Maddox was at the bank. Some of the, again, biggest names in Hobbs. And you realize that they were just here. They were doing their job. But Mom wouldn't let me go through that fear. But watching Dad become really confident in his capabilities as he grew pigs for 4-H, he became one of the folks that everyone around came to. And seeing him blossom and grow even into his 40s and 50s was something that, again, that transformation of self-esteem, that transformation of discovering your own way. I got to watch Dad do that because I was old enough to recognize what was going on. And again, Mom just had this tenacity that she was going to help everybody around. And so she would pick up people and put them back into college, kick them out of the nest and say, you get back out there, you're going to finish college. And so these kids who would come and say, if it weren't for your mom, I would have been a total failure in life. So all these stories, she just kind of adopted everybody that was on the down and outs in all of Hobbs, but she ingrained that same emotion, that same feeling into us as a family. So again, the value of a parent, mom and a dad, at least one of them there, and what they can instill in their kids gives for generations to come, because I'm still teaching the lessons they taught me to my grandkids now, and they're learning the lessons and will teach to their grandkids. But it was kind of Mom and Dad who broke away from that mold over there south of Lubbock. We're going to get out of here. Eventually, all of the brothers and sisters left because they saw if Dad could do it, they could do it. So again, a really unique human story. Yes, Mom was called Jane Pearce. Dad was Melvin Pearce. And then my brothers, Mike was the oldest. Thomas was the second. I was third. And then Thomas, our only sister, was fourth. My brother Philip and Greg followed her. So it was 5 boys and 1 girl. And I tell people she outnumbered us by a lot. She is just like Mom. She's got that tremendous drive and just fantastic. But each one of us had opportunities that never would have had in life. A lot of my classmates finished high school and their moms didn't see how they could do it. Mom never saw how we could do it. She just told us from the day I was old enough to remember, 3 and 4 years old, you were going to college. I didn't know what college was, but she had convinced me by the time I hit 5. And I'm starting into grade school thinking, I got to get this thing finished up so I can get into college. I didn't know what the devil that was. But other kids, their parents weren't as insistent, and they graduated the same year I did. Friends of mine would go to work in the oil field, and that's where they were. There's nothing wrong with it. But Mom always had such a vision of where we could go in life. And that vision just has played out for a lifetime for me. And again, the thoughts of success implanted by the just daily hammering of the value system from a parent that could see. I was really struggling to catch hold in life. I could have easily just stayed so quiet, so reserved, and so shy where I began in life, and she just would have nothing of it. You know, it's dramatically important. Absolutely. Thank you.